more articulate or more prominent or more apt spokespersons than the heads of the BJP IT cell, Amit Malviya, and the Congress Party's social and digital media head, Supriya Srinath. They'll be joining us in just a moment. But first, I want to play out the story as to how Jack Dorsey made these very stunning claims and how there has been a political fallout to it almost immediately here in India.
The spectre of the Kisan agitation against the government's farm laws reform has returned after a stunning charge from former Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey. In an interview to a YouTube channel, the co-founder of the microblogging site claimed the company was threatened by the Indian government to block content linked to the farmer protest.
Well, India is a country that had many requests of us around the farmers' protest, around particular journalists that were critical of the government, and it manifested in ways such as we will shut Twitter down in India, which is a very large market for us. We will raid the homes of your employees, which they did.
The centre was quick to hit back at Dorsey, accusing him of spreading outright lies, claiming under his watch, Twitter repeatedly violated Indian law.
Nothing of the sort happened. Nobody was raided. Nobody was put in jail. And I am very surprised and shocked that a man who used to be the CEO of this platform is today resorting to outright lies.
देखिए जो कहा गया है वो झूठ और सफेद झूठ है। वर्षों की नींद के बाद जागे जैक डॉर्से अपने काले कारनामों पर पर्दा डालना चाहते हैं।
In 2021, at the heights of the farmer agitation, the government asked Twitter to remove 1,200 accounts for alleged Khalistani links. Indian courts also asked Twitter to block 4,900 tweets. The Delhi police even raided Twitter's offices in Delhi and Gurugram in connection with the controversy over manipulated media tags. In fact, former IT Minister Ravi Prasad was also briefly blocked by the platform for an alleged violation of US copyright law. In 2022, the war escalated after Twitter took legal action claiming disproportionate use of power by the central government.
भारत का संविधान उस समय मानते थे ना भारत का कानून मानते थे और सबसे बड़ी बात है कि हम लोगों ने कहा था कि आप अपने अकाउंट को वेरीफाई करिए.
But Dorsey's latest claims have sparked a political firestorm, with the opposition accusing the government of standing exposed over its attempts to muzzle Twitter.
There has been a systematic erosion of the freedom of speech and expression and civil liberties in the country.
This proves that we have dictatorship in garb of democracy in the country.
वो ठीक नहीं था, मतलब देश के अंदर अगर कोई किसान आंदोलन को रोकने की अगर कोशिश की गई तो ये तो गलत बात है.
However, Jack Dorsey is not new to political controversy, even in the United States. After banning Donald Trump and curbing tweets from US conservatives, he was criticized for blocking the New York Post story on US President Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden. He also faced flack for promoting a poster calling to smash Brahminical patriarchy. So is there a political agenda at play by the former Twitter CEO? Are his charges fact or fiction?
All right, I said this at the top of the show. I can't think of two more apt or pertinent spokespersons of the two main national parties, the BJP and the Congress, to be debating this on a day when the former CEO of Twitter has made these stunning allegations. Amit Malviya is the IT department head of the BJP and Supriya Srinath is the chairperson of social media and digital platforms of the Congress Party. My request to both the spokespersons before we start the debate is please speak one at a time, because if you speak over each other, neither will you be able to hear each other, nor will our viewers. So let me start with you, Mr. Malviya. At the height of the farmers' protest in 2021, the centre had asked Twitter to take down about 1,200 accounts for alleged links with Khalistan. Before that, it had asked the platform to take down more than 250 accounts. The public spat with Twitter at that time. Much of it is recorded. During 2021, saw the Modi government seeking an emergency blocking of the provocative Twitter hashtag Modi planning farmer genocide and dozens of accounts. Twitter had initially complied with some of the government requests, but later it cited insufficient justification. And in subsequent weeks, there were multiple raids by the Delhi police of the Twitter offices. What has Jack Dorsey said today which you are so offended by, which did not happen back in 2021? Either the request to take down tweets or the raids.
Well, Zaka, we are not offended at all. In fact, we are amused at the lie that Dorsey came out with. And let's not forget, Dorsey spoke about not just India, but he also spoke about several other countries, including the United States as home country. We all know that Twitter under Dorsey was a partisan platform. Their role in the American presidential election has now been chronicled in great detail. The platform was systematically targeting Republican voices, so much so that they deplatformed Donald Trump in the middle of the election when he was still the sitting president of the United States. On the other hand, you had the same platform censoring New York Post's article on Biden-Hunter and the New York Times article on Donald Trump, which put out personal details of his tax filings, was made public on this platform, which incidentally is a violation of the US federal laws. Now, this is the track record of Twitter as far as America goes, and even in India, there have been instances where the platform has muzzled expression, it has shadow banned voices that are ideologically not aligned to the core team of Twitter. They've also gone on to the extent of promoting voices that were secessionist in their tone and tenor, and they have done all of this, including Dorsey, who held out a poster called Smash Brahminical Patriarchy, which was essentially an attempt to wade into India's social fault lines. So Dorsey himself is guilty of doing some of these things, and he should have steered clear of meddling with internal political affairs of any country. Now, the era that we are talking about, we had a public discourse of sorts where the rights and powers of these big tech companies was discussed ad nauseum. I remember there was this talk about whether the platforms had more power than the sovereign laws and regulations. Twitter, in particular, and under Dorsey's leadership, had arrogated itself the right to position itself as above the sovereign laws, and they refused to comply with the Indian regulations for almost 2 years. It was during that period that we had this farmer agitation, and we all know that a big chunk of this farmer agitation drew its support from foreign forces, including people who commented on it regularly, and the opposition, the Congress in particular, even then got excited and tried to make it an international issue. However, I did not see any of these celebrities or any of these foreign powers step in when there was a protest, say, for instance, in Canada. Dorsey also did not speak about Canada as a country where similar protests were put down fairly brutally. It was not just the farmer protests that we are talking about. Even during COVID, we knew how Twitter under Dorsey was promoting a certain pharma giant and encouraging people to take their jab. Now, it's a big industry that was at play. And we are very clear about one thing, Zaka, that if you have to operate in India and you have to have access to our market, you have to also follow the rules of the land. And any government, whether it is ours or for that matter, any other political parties, the government of the day is completely entitled to ask any social media giant to restrict accounts which it believes is indulging in criminal activity. It is promoting terror, pedophilia, pornography, and there are several similar sections that have been enshrined in the law. So the government can ask a platform to do, and the platform is obliged to follow through.
So
now,
let me ask,
if the aggrieved has a reason to go to the court or seek remedial, they're free to do so.
So let me ask Supriya Srinath. The law of the land, as Amit Malviya said, is Section 69A of the IT Act 2000. It was subsequently amended twice when the UPA was in power. It allows the centre to issue blocking orders to social media intermediary companies in the interests of sovereignty, integrity of India, defence of India, security of the state, friendly relations with foreign states, or public order, or for preventing incitement to violence. There have been multiple requests sent when the UPA was in power to take down tweets that you thought violated any of these conditions. And so was the case when the NDA was in power. So what are you so then offended by what the NDA government asked Twitter to do, which was asked when you were in power as well.
So thank you for having me on the show, and I listened to almost 4 minutes of a State of the Union address, and I hope you will not interrupt me like you did not interrupt my counterpart even once. I think it's not so much about what Jack Dorsey has said. Who is Jack Dorsey? He is the founder of Twitter. He is a former CEO. He does not even happen to be on the board of Twitter anymore. Does he have a reason to lie? Because that was the first response. And contrary to what is being peddled out right now, the first response to Dorsey's interview actually came from the Minister of State for IT. And then, of course, the BJP's fake news factory followed very soon. So who is he? I mean, he said something. He's basically shown the mirror to something that we've always known, which is the mother of democracy is witnessing the murder of democracy every day. My issue is larger, and that has to do on two parts. First, the freedom of speech. And second, what was the government doing while the farmers were agitating? 750 farmers lost their lives while they agitated and protested against the draconian farm laws for over a year. They were sitting right here at the borders of New Delhi. The roads were dug up. Barbed wires were put. They were called Andolanjivis, Naxalis, Atankwadis, Pakistanis, Khalistanis by the very same government, the very same ministers, the very same spokespersons. But the reality is 750 farmers lost their lives while they did that. And what did the government do? One was hoping and presuming that the government of the day was running helter-skelter trying to find solutions, bridging a channel. But what the government was doing instead was to A, malign them, assassinate their reputations, ensure that 1.5 lakh of those farmers still face grave charges in the courts of law. And at that time, it is now clear that the government was trying to suppress their voices. I mean, Jack Dorsey doesn't have one reason to lie today, but the BJP has 1,000 reasons to hide the truth. My problem is larger. My problem is when people from the BJP turn around and say that the farmer movement was funded by foreign money or there was a foreign conspiracy against India, my counterpoint to that is, if that is true, why did the government backtrack? If that is true, why did the government take back the farm laws, which were very draconian? The reality is you were assassinating reputations then. You did not care about the sacrifice of 750 farmer lives. You don't even care now. The reality is that you have an issue with anybody who shows you the mirror, anybody who believes in free speaking. This is the government that arrested a 21-year-old climate activist and alleged that she had a toolkit. They dragged her all the way to New Delhi, and guess what? In the courts, the Delhi police that reports to the Home Minister Amit Shah did not have a single line to prove, and it all came crashing down. This is the same police that arrests a reporter like Mandeep Punia. This is the same police that, this is the same government that is so scared of a Rihanna or a Greta Thunberg. Forget about the Indian opposition, and more on that as we speak.
Okay, but Supriya, you have still not answered the question as to why should Twitter, if any company that is operating in this country, be it a real estate company or a news media company or a food company, has to comply with the law of the land, why should Twitter or any other social media platform be an exception to that?
And I don't think any of us battle for the point that there should be an exception made. Absolutely not. The law of the land prevails. But what is the law of the land? The law of the land cannot be that the day the fake news factory of the BJP, the day the spokespersons of the BJP, some of their MPs get tagged for putting out manipulated media. Twitter tags them for putting out manipulated media, an alleged toolkit that they were putting out. The next day, Twitter goes calling at, the police gets calling at Twitter's doorstep in Gurgaon. If this is not vendetta, then what is? On the 24th of May 2021, when the police went calling at Gurgaon office of Twitter, you think they did it out of their own goodwill to uphold the law of the land? Or was it vendetta because they were being called out for actually putting out manipulated media, for actually putting out fake news, not once, but multiple times over?
Let me ask Mr. Malviya, according to the Twitter Transparency Report, India ranks number 5 in terms of requests from government to Twitter to remove content. This is after Japan, Russia, South Korea and Turkey. Surely not, an esteemed group of countries that India wants to be seen with. India sent nearly 5,500 legal demands, including court orders as well as government orders, to block content. It also sent 5,900 requests for access to personal information of users between January of 2012 and June of 2020. Surely, Mr. Malviya, there is some merit in what the Congress is alleging and what the other opposition is saying, that your government has asked for a disproportionate number of tweets, are to be taken down because you're not comfortable with what those tweets are saying about the government.
Zaka, I find it quite amusing that the Congress spokesperson has such faith in Dorsey's words. But be as it may, look at the trend and spot the events. Rahul Gandhi goes to the United Kingdom and he appeals for foreign intervention. He gets castigated for it back home. He then goes to the United States and meets several groups with dubious antecedents, most of them linked to Jamaat and ISI. He also has clandestine meetings with officials in the US government, the details of which are still not out in the public domain. He meets representatives of George Soros as part of a think tank confabulation. And lo and behold, we have this comment coming in from Jack Dorsey. The question here is that is Jack Dorsey a part of the Congress's international toolkit that it is deploying routinely in Indian politics? We saw that during the farmer agitation. We saw that during Pegasus when Rahul Gandhi fronted the attack both in the parliament and outside. We saw that during the CA protest, also during the Rafale episode as it unfolded. So is the Congress party guilty of leaning on foreign money and media for ensuring that its politics gets aligned here in the country? Rahul Gandhi is clearly playing a very dangerous game. He's an insidious man and he really needs to be called out. That's point number one. Point number two is on the data that you put out. The countries that you mentioned, the 2021-22 transparency report of Twitter clearly says that there were 47,000 odd requests and a mere 8% of them came from India. The number would be in the vicinity of about 4,000 or something similar to what you have quoted. But not getting into the exact number, it's a very small number when compared to the population of the country. Clearly percentages don't do justice because you'll have to look at the complaint per lakh or per million or per crore as you like, and that's a very, very tiny number that we're talking about.
Okay.
The other point is that not all legal notices are sent by the government and they are not all meant to suppress voices. Some of them are legal notices because somebody's client may have approached the court and the court may have made some observation and issued the legal notice.
Yeah.
So there is a process here. It's not as if things are happening in the most draconian fashion and nobody seems to know about it. It's quite a departure from UPA era when 10,000 villagers had been slapped with the sedition case, when none other than a very benign Dr. Manmohan Singh came out and said that the Kudankulam agitation was sponsored by foreign powers. So we have had precedents and we've had instances where the UPA has been fairly ham-handed, not as nuanced as we have been. And I'm again repeating, it is the privilege and the prerogative of any government of the day to make demands on these social media platforms if it thinks that there are certain accounts which are running foul of law. Freedom of speech in India is limited by the amendment to 19A. However, in the US, the First Amendment allows for absolute freedom of speech. And even in America, the Twitter's role is a checkered and dark one. The way they meddled with American elections, the way they have been summoned by the US Congress not once but several times, including Dorsey, the details that have come out by way of the Twitter files is quite indicting of Dorsey and his team while they were helming Twitter. Lastly, the question again needs to be asked, why is the Congress so hell-bent on dragging in foreign forces in Indian political landscape? Is it that they will use these foreign powers, the likes of George Soros and the big money, to undermine India's electoral choices, to unseat a democratically elected government? The people of India have elected Prime Minister Modi twice with a full majority, and they will likely do that again in 2024.
Supriya Srinath, isn't the timing of Dorsey's accusations, like you yourself said, he has nothing to do with Twitter anymore, he's not even on the board, and this is something that happened in February of 2021, for him to come now a good 2 years later and make these accusations, isn't it questionable? Because the BJP, and you heard Mr. Malviya saying a moment ago that it's coming right after Rahul Gandhi's series of attacks in the United States. He's been speaking at universities and other platforms there, saying that there is a democratic backslide here in India. He said the same thing in Cambridge back in April. And right after that, you have Jack Dorsey, who, as you said, has nothing to do with today's Twitter, coming out and making allegations about something that happened 2 years ago.
What do you mean I said? You can go to SEC and find out what does he have to or have not to do with Twitter. It's not as if I'm giving out some eternal truth that nobody knows about. But anyways, I think I first need to pay back in the same penny that some things were said on the show, and then I will answer your direct question. Narendra Modi is playing a very dangerous game, and this man needs to be called out. His game is that at all costs he is, and these are not my words, these are the words that were used for my leader. I'm just paying back in the same penny. He's playing a dangerous game, and this man needs to be called out. And I will tell you why he needs to be called out. Because when India needs to focus on inflation, when India needs to focus on joblessness, when India needs to focus on income inequality, when India needs to focus on Chinese aggression, when India needs to focus on the whole scam that's surrounding this government as far as Adani is concerned, what is he doing? He's setting his people loose to hatch some conspiracy theories that are international in nature and otherwise. You think the Indian National Congress, India's principal opposition party, the only party that fought for the freedom of this country and has not lost one, but has actually sacrificed two of its prime ministers, both Indira ji and Rajeev ji, will be playing the dirty game that Narendra Modi in his mind thinks we will play. You think Indian National Congress in anybody's right mind can be accused of colluding with anti-Indian forces? The reality is, this is all a figment of their imagination. If they have proof, let them have the courage or the wherewithal to put it out. Because what they do here is come on TV shows, shoot and scoot, and not a single person asks them for proof. If you are man enough, put proofs on the table and let's have a discussion. Stop doing this nonsense that you do each time, whether it's on social media or media. I also want to ask one more question. John Kirby, you were all right to lap up John Kirby when he was showing you the mirror, but you have a problem with Anthony Blinken. You have a problem with Rihanna, but you also have a problem with Jack Dorsey. What sort of double standards do you have? Either you are going to endorse every global opinion that comes your way, or you're going to reject them all.
Okay.
And one second, I also want to tell people, especially those in the media, I don't think I've got enough time. There was much more time given, so please keep your patience. I also think there were many, including many in the media, who were questioning, why is Rahul Gandhi saying that Loktantra kamzor ho raha hai, democracy is being weakened? Precisely for this reason, that when farmers were agitating against the draconian laws, you were not looking for solutions, you were not looking to build bridges, you were not looking to get them on board, you were looking to suppress their voices. And the reality is the exact same script that I had imagined came from the BJP. They are lying. Everybody who shows a mirror to this government is lying. Wire is lying, Quint is lying. News Laundry is lying, News Minutes is lying. Everybody. Dainik Bhaskar is lying, Bharat Samachar is lying. Everybody who shows a mirror to this government is lying. Okay. The reality is you are so uncomfortable with the truth because the truth demolishes the very cleverly crafted image that the Prime Minister has. It values zero in my opinion.
The question that you asked, Mr. Malviya, if you have proof that Mr. Rahul Gandhi is indulging in serious activities, meeting George Soros, having secret meetings in the White House, put it in the public domain. Let the people know.
Well, we have already done that. I put out pictures of Rahul Gandhi meeting a close aide of George Soros in his US trip. There are media reports talking about his clandestine meeting with the US officials. It's all there in the public domain. I'm simply reiterating what has happened. Rahul Gandhi's utterance that he wants foreign powers to intervene in India's internal affairs is in the public domain, and you have all debated it ad nauseum. But that's just a limited point on the dangerous game that Rahul Gandhi is playing, and he needs to be called out for it. On the other facts that the Congress spokesperson dished out, and of course she's being economical with truth, or perhaps she's unaware or incompetent, or I'm not quite sure, doing what Rahul Gandhi does best, fibbing on air. India's economy is today growing at 7.2%. Inflation is at 4.2%, lowest in 18 months. It's the lowest worldwide. Wholesale inflation is a negative zone at 0.96%. It's the lowest in 34 years. Export is at the highest ever, $770 billion. Fiscal deficit at 6.4, the best that India has seen in the longest time. These are economic numbers, macroeconomic numbers that I've dished out. Morgan Stanley just put out a report saying India's transformation is phenomenal. It's the same firm that had called Indian economy in fragile five while UPA was in power, and Chidambaram, who happened to be the Congress spokesperson mentor, was the finance minister. So do I need to say anything more about the kind of economic development and transformation India has seen under Prime Minister Modi?
Okay.
As far as everything else that the Congress spokesperson said, it's rhetoric, it's rambling. The farm laws that she called draconian, the Congress promised it several times in its manifesto, could not ever implement it. The state governments in Punjab, in fact, went ahead and implemented part of it. But political expediency made them turn their backs on it. But that's a completely different matter. The truth is that Jack Dorsey, the Pegasus story, the celebrities the Congress spokesperson was endorsing, the likes of Rihanna and Greta and the number of rag publications she spoke about, saying that they're critical of the government, are all part of the Congress ecosystem. They are discredited just like the Congress is. I don't even want to name any other publication on your channel, but the fact is that the Congress spokesperson is peddling those names because she wants them to get some credibility, because they are absolute trash. You should not allow your platform to be used for promoting.
Okay. Let's come to the issue at hand.
Saying that they are Kamal Sandesh.
Yeah, the
official magazine of the Congress Party.
No, one second. Let's come to the issue at hand. Look, I don't want to discuss other media publications, but Supriya, please answer on the question of principle. Around the same time that the farmer protest was happening and Mr. Dorsey made the claims today about what happened in February of 2021, in January of 2021, his same company, while he was CEO, was thrust right into the center of the clashes that happened outside the U.S. Capitol building. They permanently suspended the account of the then President Donald Trump for encouraging protests and said that this had potential to incite violence. If they can do that as per U.S. law, then what is wrong in the Indian government asking this platform to remove tweets which had potential for incitement to violence as per Indian law? Isn't that double standards?
So firstly, no, absolutely not. I will just tell you, A, I'm not a spokesperson for Jack Dorsey or Twitter. Of course, they should comply with Indian laws. But let me first put some things on the table. There was a word used for me, incompetent. Go and see the same Twitter that you're bashing here and you will get to know who's incompetent. We both do the same job. I happen to head a social media platform. He heads the fake news factory and still being bashed for your incompetence every single day by your own people, by people in your ecosystem. I think, you know, your head is in the line of fire. Save your job, all the best with it. The second important point that I want to make, don't be economical with economic truth, because there's something about economy that I understand and you certainly would not in this life. You want to talk about GDP numbers? Let's talk about GDP numbers. Where is consumption? It's below 60% in the quarter that was just reported. What are the LPG prices? The highest in the world in India. Petrol, third highest. Diesel, eighth highest. What is the level of debt into GDP ratio? At 84%. 84 damning percent. Do you understand the repercussions of those things? Do you understand the purchasing power parity difference between us and UK, who you keep tom-tomming that you've overtaken? $7,000 for India, $58,000 for the United Kingdom. So don't be economical with the truth. I know you are incompetent and inefficient and perhaps too naive to understand these numbers. Let me also say, you have issues with me quoting publications. I'll quote other publications. The Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, the NYT. They're also all trash. The Time Magazine, The Economist, they're all trash. But the Morning Star that does a survey with 200 people is absolute gospel truth. Some new Guardian that has come in is gospel truth, and they will all keep sharing that toolkit. The reality, Zaka, is that the government actually has a lot to answer. And before we move any further in this debate, I want to pose a direct question on the COVID leak. The government has acknowledged that the leak did happen the previous time. When was the previous leak? Why was data leaked? Was it reported? Was some action taken? Were people informed? Very sensitive data with the government has leaked multiple times over. This is repeated offense. You can't keep your own house in order, and you want to hold a mirror to everybody who tries to show a mirror to you.
Okay.
Good for you, but realize what? The realization should dawn on you that you are in charge. You are in government right now. Have the wherewithal to pick up the phone and speak to the Biden administration and lodge a complaint against pro-Khalistan slogans. But you're so blinded by your hate against Rahul Gandhi that you want to stand with the Khalistanis and not protect the right of an Indian. You are so blinded by your hate against Rahul Gandhi. 1 second.
Yeah.
You do not put up... 1 second. Let me finish.
Zaka.
You do not pick up the phone and inform the Trudeau administration of your objections. The Trudeau administration is absolutely silent, and so is the government of India. You are so blinded by hatred that you have put national
I have to wrap up, but Mr. Malviya, this is not a debate on Covid. This is not a debate on Covid, but since she asked a question, please respond, and then I'm closing after that. Yeah.
Zaka, I'm going to stick to the topic of the debate, and I have two very simple questions to ask. Why did Rahul go to America and meet George Soros associates? Why did he meet groups
one
which
at a
are
time,
aligned
please.
to Jamaat and
One at a
ISI?
time, please.
And
Thank
to
you.
the Congress party,
One at a time, thank you.
if you are so offended by the Khalistanis protesting in Rahul Gandhi's meeting and the procession in Canada, why do you have a truck with the DMK which embraces Rajiv Gandhi's killers? So when it is convenient politically, you embrace the killers of Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi, and on another occasion you frown and whine about it. Please answer, why did Rahul Gandhi meet the Jamaat and ISI frontal organizations in Pakistan?
Okay, I'm going to fade down from both the spokespersons because unfortunately for 28 minutes plus, we had a very good debate between both the spokespersons, and I must give them credit that they did not speak over each other, but unfortunately in the last 30 seconds or so, I think that kind of changed. So I'm going to pull down, but thank you very much to both Amit Malviya and to Supriya Srinath for, I think, 99% of the time of that debate. We had a very, very meaningful conversation, a conversation between two party spokespersons without interruptions and without, of course, crosstalk. But let's now move on to the other focus on brass tacks tonight, and that is coming from the state of Bengal, a day after News18 published an exclusive report on the ED's submissions before court in the Cash for Jobs scam in West Bengal. Prime Minister Modi today, while addressing the Rozgar Mela, hit out at the opposition. Without naming any particular party, he said that there used to be a time when there was a rate card for government jobs. The Prime Minister claimed that the poor are being looted by the opposition. Now, according to the ED submissions before court, the candidates for government jobs in Bengal have paid hefty sums ranging from 4 lakh rupees to 6 lakh rupees to secure positions like labourers, clerks, teachers and engineers, among other positions. The probe has revealed that since 2014, approximately 6,000 vacancies in 60 civic bodies were filled through corrupt practices. The Trinamool Congress has dismissed these charges, calling them political vendetta.
मीडिया में आई रिपोर्ट देखी होगी, अखबारों में, टीवी पे काफी कुछ देखने को मिला। हर पद के लिए रेड कार्ड है, रेड कार्ड बताया गया, और रेड कार्ड भी कैसा है? छोटे छोटे गरीबों को लूटा जा रहा है। अगर आप सफाई कर्मी की नौकरी चाहिए तो उसके लिए आपको ये रेट रहेगा।
Modi is making totally baseless allegations.
West Bengal is on sale. Mamata Banerjee and her nephew are making money hand over fist.
All right, these are submissions made by the Enforcement Directorate in relation to another case where they stumbled upon this rate card, as the ED is calling it. It's been submitted to the court. They have put out a whole roster of how much people have had to pay. 4 lakhs for Mazdoor, 4 lakhs for sweeper, peons, etc. 5 lakhs for dumper operator, 4 lakhs for helper, 4 lakhs for driver. This is what the ED has submitted to court. Priyanka Tibrewal is spokesperson and secretary of the BJP in West Bengal. Saket Gokhale, spokesperson of the TMC, will also be joining us. Priyanka Tibrewal, the TMC is saying if you have evidence, if the agencies have evidence against politicians or officers who, quote unquote, indulged in this rate card, then make that public. Go ahead and arrest those politicians and those officers. Why are you not doing that? Why is the ED not doing that and instead doing this political vendetta?
Right. Very good evening. See, nobody is waiting for a nod from TMC or Mamata Banerjee or the accused Bhaipo Abhishek Banerjee. Nobody is waiting for a nod from them. See, it is the ED and the CBI who are working. It is not the BJP who is working. There are certain norms which they follow when they are investigating into something. And I completely believe that they are sticking to it and they are following all the rules and regulations which have to be followed. Now, whatever we have seen, all said and done, those who went behind the bars, tell me, Can you just put in someone inside the jail without having any kind of evidences against them? No. Because if that would have been the case, then the ministers of Mamata government wouldn't have been inside. So many close aid of Abhishek Banerjee wouldn't have been inside. They wouldn't have been denied a bail. So there is definitely evidence against them. There is definitely substance in the hand of the ED and the CBI. That's the reason they're all behind bars.
Okay. But Priyanka Tibrewal, again, the TMC is saying that there is no proof that such a rate card exists. In any case, to be able to prove this in a court of law, and you are a lawyer, is going to be next to impossible. Such things do not happen with documentation.
Definitely, there are documents where it was decided that if there are jobs to be given in the school or for the school scam, whatever happened, the job scam we had seen. Definitely, there is something which the CBI or the ED have in their hands. Otherwise, this would not come out like this. And I will tell you, why are they getting so impatient? Why are they getting so impatient? Tell me something. If you have done nothing, I have done nothing. Why will I, every day scream and say, arrest me, arrest me, arrest me? Why would I do so? Because definitely deep within, inside myself, I know that I have done something wrong. And every day I am living with the fear that that will open and people will come to know about it.
Tibrewal, this also happened to be, by happenstance that the ED discovered this. These were raids that were happening at the offices of Iron Sill of ABS Info Zone. It happened on the 19th and 20th of March. The ED seized documents. This is, of course, in an unrelated case. This was in the teachers' recruitment scam. And then they filed an affidavit in the Calcutta High Court talking about cash for jobs scam in the teachers' recruitment. This just happens to be something that they stumbled upon, and they've now filed this in court as a submission. Now, the point is, if this has been going on since 2014-15, as the ED claims in its submission to the court, then surely the agencies are doing a bad job, because this has been going on for the better part of almost 10 years now, according to the ED's own claim.
I can't sit here and blame the ED or the CBI because they are doing their work. In the past, we have seen there have been number of cases, whether it was the case of Jayalalitha or whether it was the case of Lalu Prasad Yadav. It took time because you see ED and CBI are not only here to handle the scams which has happened in West Bengal. They are taking care of many other such matters all over from India. So definitely it needs, yes, we will definitely say that we need that they should speed up the investigation. But again, it should not be the concern of the accused. It should not be their concern at all, because whatever lies inside will definitely come out.
Okay, Priyanka Tibrewal, we'll leave it at that. Unfortunately, Saket Gokhale was supposed to join this debate because of some technical reasons. He has not come on the broadcast. We'll try and see. We'll try and reach out to the TMC if they have a reaction on this for the remainder of the show. Meanwhile, let's shift focus now to the other big story. Cyclone Biparjoy is progressing. It is all set to make landfall near Jakhua in Gujarat. This is going to happen Thursday. There is a high alert in Mumbai as well. The Gujarat government has said that more than 20,000 people from the affected districts have been evacuated so far. Multiple NDRF teams have also been deployed and pre-positioned. Control rooms have been set up for 24/7 operations. Home Minister Amit Shah has said that the government, both at the centre and at the state, is fully prepared to tackle this calamity.
विगत 9 वर्षों में यह क्षेत्र में केंद्र सरकार और राज्यों ने मिलकर काफी उपलब्धियां प्राप्त की है, इससे कोई डिनाई नहीं कर सकता। मगर हम संतुष्ट होकर नहीं बैठ सकते, क्योंकि आपदाओं ने अपना स्वरूप भी बदला है, आपदाओं की फ्रीक्वेंसी भी बढ़ी है और आपदाओं की तीव्रता भी बढ़ी है। तो हमने हमारी तैयारियों को इसके साथ ज्यादा पैनी करनी पड़ेगी और ज्यादा व्यापक भी करनी पड़ेगी। कई जगह पे अलग अलग प्रकार की नए क्षेत्रों में भी आपदा का अनुभव आ रहा है। बाढ़ के नए क्षेत्र उभरते जा रहे हैं। कई नए स्थानों पर भी गर्मी की लू के थपेड़े सहन करने पड़ रहे हैं और इस सब के लिए हमने देश से नाते अपने आप को तैयार करने पड़ेगा।
A wind speed of almost 50 to 60 kilometers per hour, light drizzle. We are in Jamnagar, which is just adjoining Dwarka, which is one of the worst affected areas, expected to be hit due to the cyclone, which will make a landfall on 15th of evening. Now, remember, today heavy to very heavy rainfall was experienced in several low-lying areas of Gujarat, leading to evacuation of almost 20,000 people. SDRF, NDRF were all pressed into service. In fact, 17 teams of NDRF helped into the rescue operation. As of now, several districts of Gujarat are on an orange alert, and as we speak, massive operations are being put in place by the Coast Guard, by the Navy as well, in order to keep tabs on the situation. As of now, fisher folks have been advised to stay away from waters. Everyone has been advised to stay away from the seashores, because winds have been flowing in gusty speeds. Also, the air operations have been affected in several parts. Air India has already announced cancellation of several flights. Several other flights have also been affected due to the continuous, incessant, heavy winds that we have been experiencing. Railways have announced, either cancellation of several trains or postponement of them. So as of now, several measures are being put in place, even as it is expected that the wind speed will only rise tomorrow and day after tomorrow. Day after tomorrow, it's expected to cross over 135 kilometers per hour. Along with heavy to very heavy rainfall in several locations on the coastline of Gujarat. As of now, the situation in Jamnagar, where we are around 50 to 60 kilometers away from Dwarka, which is going to be in the line of the cyclone when it makes the landfall, the situation here also seems to have been affected. We have been experiencing some heavy gusty winds along with a drizzle at several locations.
बेहद तेज़ हवाएं अभी चल रही है और बारिश भी यहाँ पर शुरू हो चुकी है। और मैं बता दूँ, यहाँ पर मैं उस जगह पर हूँ जहाँ पर जो फोरकास्ट के मुताबिक यहीं से यानी जखौ से यह साइक्लोन गुजरने वाला है और इसका असर यहाँ से देखना शुरू हो चुका है। यहाँ पर तेज़ हवाएं चलने लगी और ये जो आप इलाका देख रहे हैं पूरा खाली करा दिया गया है। दरअसल ये जखौ पोर्ट के बाहर की तस्वीरें जहाँ पर मछुआरे रहते हैं, पूरा एक गाँव है, पूरे गाँव को खाली करा दिया गया, लोगों को सुरक्षित जगहों पर पहुँचा दिया गया है। तेज़ हवाएं चल रही हैं, पेड़ों की शाखों को देखकर आपको अंदाजा लगेगा कि किस हद तक तेज हवाएं वहां पर चल रही है और बारिश भी यहां पर हो रही है और 135 किलोमीटर यानी 15 तारीख की वो सुबह का समय बताया जा रहा है जब यहीं से जखौ से वो साइक्लोन यहां से गुजरेगा और उस समय उसकी रफ्तार है वो 135 किलोमीटर प्रति घंटे की होगी। चाहे शिप हो अपने कोस्ट गार्ड के, चाहे एयरक्राफ्ट हो हमारे एयरफोर्स के, उनको सुरक्षित जगहों पर फिलहाल अभी ले जाया जा रहा है। और अभी स्थिति थोड़ा आसमान में दिखाऊंगा तो उससे अंदाजा लगेगा किस तरीके से काले बादल और इस तरीके से पूरा असर देखने को मिल रहा है।
हम लोग पोरबंदर में है। पोरबंदर में बदला हुआ मिजाज आपको दिखाते हैं कि मौसम का मिजाज बदल गया है और जो समुंदर में बिपरजोय तूफान आ रहा है उसके कारण जो तटीय इलाका है वहाँ अलर्ट दे दिया है और सबसे ज़्यादा जो इफेक्ट होने वाला है वो एरिया है पोरबंदर, द्वारका और कच्छ, जो तीनों इलाका है जहाँ ज़्यादातर इफेक्ट होने वाली है। तो रेलवे ने भी यहाँ तैयारी प्रशासन ने की है कि जो आने जाने वाली ट्रेनें हैं सौराष्ट्र के खास करके कोस्टल एरिया में, वो सारी ट्रेनें रद्द कर दी है। हमारे साथ है पोरबंदर से रेलवे के ऑफिसर। सर, ये बताइए कि अभी बदला हुआ मिजाज और आपकी क्या तैयारी?
जिस तरह से अभी जो हालात खड़े हुए हैं तूफान की वजह से, तो उसके तैयारी के रूप से पोरबंदर स्टेशन के सभी उच्च अधिकारियों ने अपनी पूरी तैयारी कर ली है। जैसे कि आप मेरे पीछे देख सकते हैं, रेलवे के हेल्पलाइन नंबर भी तैयार किए, हेल्प डेस्क भी तैयार कर ली है। जैसे कि आप जानते हैं यहाँ से कई सारी ट्रेनें बहुत सी चलती है, तो उन सबको इस तूफ़ान की परिस्थिति की वजह से कैंसिल कर दी गई है। तो उनके जो कैंसिल उसके कारण अगर यात्रियों को कोई असुविधा हो रही है तो वो असुविधा न हो उसके लिए रेलवे ने अपनी पूरी तैयारी कर ली है। जैसे कि अगर किसी को खाने पीने की व्यवस्था, तो उसके लिए भी व्यवस्था है हमारे लिए। फूड पैकेज तैयार है, पानी की बोतलें, फूड पैकेज सब तैयार है। अगर कहीं भी अगर गाड़ी फंस जाती है तो यात्रियों को अपनी निर्धारित जगह पर पहुँचाने के लिए एसटी, प्राइवेट ट्रांसपोर्ट, उन सभी की पूरी व्यवस्था हमारे द्वारा की गई है।
बिपोर जो है साइक्लोन को लेके हर तरह की तैयारियां की जा रही है, खास करके कच्छ के मांडवी जहां पे न्यूज़ 18 की टीम ग्राउंड जीरो पे खड़ी है। ये समुद्र है जिसके अंदर आपको फिलहाल करंट दिख रहा होगा। कहीं ना कहीं कच्छ का जो मांडवी और जखोई है वहां पे ये जो साइक्लोन है बिपोर जो है वो 15 तारीख के आसपास आने वाला है, लेकिन उसके पहले मतलब आज 13 तारीख को ही पूरी असर देखी जा रही है। कहीं ना कहीं बरसात जो है वो पूरी तरह से हावी हो चुके हैं और जीरो विजिबिलिटी, मतलब कि जो पूरा कच्छ इलाका है वो बिल्कुल जीरो विजिबिलिटी की तरफ दिख रहा है। सारी जो व्यवस्थाएं हैं वो की जा रही है, आसपास का इलाका खाली किया जा रहा है। खास करके इस बात का ध्यान रखा जा रहा है कि 0 से 5 किलोमीटर के रेंज में मतलब कि जो रहने वाला इलाका है उस सारे इलाकों को खाली किया जा रहा है, क्योंकि उससे असर हो सकता है। खास करके जो कच्चे मकान हैं या झुपड़पट्टी में लोग आसपास रहते हैं उन सभी को खाली किया जा रहा है। ये बीच बिल्कुल बंद कर दिया गया है और समुद्र में आप करंट भी देख सकते हैं किस तरह से कच्छ के मांडवी का ये समुद्र है जहाँ पे करंट देखने मिल रहा है।
यहाँ पे जो हवामान का बहुत काफ़ी समय से सुनाई दे रहा है कि हवामान आने वाला है, इसलिए सब फिशरमैन सबकी बोटें बंद कर दिए और सब जगह पे सेव कर दिए। यहाँ पे तो मछुआरे की बोटें 4-4.5 हज़ार के करीबन है और यहाँ पे बहुत परेशानी होती है लोगों को फिशिंग के बंद होने के कारण पे।
अभी स्थिति ऐसी है कि अभी 15 तारीख को तूफान का आगाही बता रहा है, मगर फिर भी स्कूल में सेव किया जा रहा है और फिशिंग सब वगैरह बंद है। उनको खाना बना सब इधर स्कूल में दे जा रहा है। अभी ठीक है सबको। नुकसान तो बहुत हो रहा है, बहुत परेशानी हो रही है, पर मगर अभी 2-3 महीने के लिए स्टॉप किया जा रहा है सीजन को।
As the effect of the cyclone Biparjoy can be experienced around Gujarat coast here in Mumbai, considering that the cyclone has moved towards up northeast, what's in fact being seen is that the sea is quite turbulent even until now. There are heavy waves that can be seen. Even in fact, Mumbai is experiencing pre-monsoon showers currently. If you can see right here at Marine Drives, the entire coast has been evacuated. There is a regular patrolling that's being done by cops in this case. And apart from that, what really is seen is that along other areas, along other coastal areas of Maharashtra, like Palghar and other regions, there has been clear indication that from 13th to 15th onwards, there should be no one who should be seen around the coast. This is in order to ensure that any kind of an effect of cyclone Biparjoy can be brought to minimum.
कितने असेट्स आप लोगों ने अभी तक डिप्लॉय किए हैं इस पूरे पाथ में?
जी, हमने इस वक्त गुजरात में हमारे 2 बड़े जहाज हैं और डॉर्नियर एयरक्राफ्ट एंड ALH हमारा ऑपरेशन कर रहा है, जो कि प्रिवेंटिव एक्शन ले रहा है इस साइक्लोन के पहुंचने से पहले। महाराष्ट्र में हमारे 5 बड़े जहाज, जो कि इस वक्त हमारे समुद्र की वो स्थिति है वो थोड़ी खराब है, तो बड़े वाले जहाज हमारे उसको सस्टेन कर सकते हैं। ऑल रेस्क्यू ऑपरेशंस एंड रेस्क्यू मिशन के लिए जितनी भी चीजें चाहिए हमको, उसके साथ वो लोग महाराष्ट्र कोस्ट पे इस वक्त है। जैसे अगर साइक्लोन जहां पर भी इफेक्ट करेगा, जहां क्रॉस कर जाएगा और वहां मदद की जरूरत होगी, ये जहाज तैयार हैं। इस बार जैसे कि हमारी फिशिंग बैन है इस वक्त वेस्ट कोस्ट में, तो बड़े वाले मैकेनाइज्ड ट्रॉलर्स जो हैं वो इस वक्त समुद्र में नहीं हैं, लेकिन फिर भी कंट्री बोट्स हमारी समुद्र में हैं। फिर हमारे हेलीकॉप्टर्स ने, डॉर्नियर्स ने और जहाजों ने उनको मैसेज पास किया VHF पे, लाउड हेलर पे, उनको आगाह करके शेपर्ड करके अंदर पोर्ट में लेके आ गए हैं। हमारा मिनट टू मिनट जो हम अपडेट है, हम अपनी तरफ से स्टेट अथॉरिटीज को और सेंट्रल अथॉरिटीज को दे रहे हैं और वहां से जो भी इनपुट है वो हमको मिल रहा है। तो एट द मोमेंट द इंटीग्रेशन एंड जो हमारी एफर्ट्स हैं एकदम सीमलेस है।
हम लोग पोरबंदर में है। पोरबंदर में बदला हुआ मिजाज आपको दिखाते हैं कि मौसम का मिजाज बदल गया है और जो समुंदर में बिपरजॉय तूफान आ रहा है उसके कारण जो तटीय इलाका है वहाँ अलर्ट दे दिया है और सबसे ज़्यादा जो इफेक्ट होने वाला है वो एरिया है पोरबंदर, द्वारका और कच्छ, जो तीनों इलाका है जहाँ ज़्यादातर इफेक्ट होने वाली है। तो रेलवे ने भी यहाँ तैयारी प्रशासन ने की है कि जो आने जाने वाली ट्रेनें हैं सौराष्ट्र के खास करके कोस्टल एरिया में, वो सारी ट्रेनें रद्द कर दी है। हमारे साथ है पोरबंदर से रेलवे के ऑफिसर। सर, ये बताइए कि अभी बदला हुआ मिजाज और आपकी क्या तैयारी?
जिस तरह से अभी जो हालात खड़े हुए हैं तूफ़ान की वजह से, तो उसके तैयारी के रूप से पोरबंदर स्टेशन के सभी उच्च अधिकारियों ने अपनी पूरी तैयारी कर ली है। जैसे कि आप मेरे पीछे देख सकते हैं, रेलवे के हेल्पलाइन नंबर भी तैयार किए हैं, हेल्प डेस्क भी तैयार कर ली है। जैसे कि आप जानते हैं, यहाँ से कई सारी ट्रेनें बहुत सी चलती है, तो उन सबको इस तूफ़ान की परिस्थिति की वजह से कैंसिल कर दी गई है। तो उनकी जो कैंसिल उसके कारण अगर यात्रियों को कोई असुविधा हो रही है, तो वो असुविधा न हो उसके लिए रेलवे ने अपनी पूरी तैयारी कर ली है। जैसे कि अगर किसी को खाने पीने की व्यवस्था, तो उसके लिए भी व्यवस्था है हमारे लिए। फूड पैकेज तैयार है, पानी की बोतलें, फूड पैकेज सब तैयार है। अगर कहीं भी अगर गाड़ी फंस जाती है, तो यात्रियों को अपनी निर्धारित जगह पर पहुंचाने के लिए एसटी, प्राइवेट ट्रांसपोर्ट, उन सभी की पूरी व्यवस्था हमारे द्वारा की गई है।
The system did not fail. There was either intentfully or without intent some sort of interference with the system.
I was given to understand that some maintenance work was indeed going on there.
The fact that it's been a month and a half since these protests started, we've had a second 6-hour-long meeting between the sports minister and the protesting wrestlers. Why should they believe, and why should the people believe, that by the 15th there will be some resolution?
Yet another fresh face-off, and multiple media reports point to not just fortifications but significant build-up on the other side of the line of actual control that is occupied by China. Bhutan airfield means a J-16 can now land within 400 kilometers of Leh and Srinagar. Is this on expected lines, or should we be really worried that the conflict is going to escalate, sir?
Rajesh Mishra and Rahul Bhargav. These are the two names which have appeared in multiple FIRs which have been launched by the victims' parents here in Punjab. And in fact, this is the office of these two scammers, if we can say, because these are the two people who actually managed to send those students outside India, and in fact, in particular to Canada, where they are now suffering to get PR. And in fact, what we are also given to understand, this is house number 146, which is in front of the new bus stand here in Jalandhar city. And this place's look and feel has been entirely changed, and in fact it was a rented accommodation from where these two were operating their office from a very long time.
As the fate of hundreds of Indian students hangs in uncertainty who are protesting on the foreign land, one thing is sure, that the agents who had helped they had taken to obtain fraud documents certainly have come under the radar of law enforcement agencies back here in India. As majority of them remain absconding, what's interesting and remains to be seen is how the events will unfold in the coming days, and will governments be able to find a solution to the ongoing problem. With Yash Goel in this special report, this is Anvish Srivastava for CNN News 18.
We have CNN News 18's Anvit joining us, who was a part of this investigation. Anvit, can you tell us more about this Farzi racket regarding the certificates for students which is required to study abroad?
Yeah, see, it was quite surprising even for us when we started hunting out for agents of following this problem of deportation that many of the students, Indian students particularly on foreign lands, have been facing for past some time. And when we zeroed down on some of the agents who claim to get you any degree or any diploma or any certificate that you need to fly abroad for higher studies, we met a few of them, and we in fact recorded the conversation. And it was really it was kind of an expose, and it was shocking for us also to find out that any test we name, be it starting from the graduation degree from various colleges, various private colleges from Delhi, Himachal Pradesh, Haryana, Punjab, a number of colleges are on their list from where they can get you a graduation degree in BCom, in commerce courses, in whatever course you want, depending upon your education in school. And then cracking tests like IELTS, TOEFL, PTE, all of them are manageable is what they have been claiming to us, even on phone calls, even when we met them in person. We met many of them. Obviously we can't show all of them. We are also hiding their identity because these 2-3 people are just not the people who are out there pulling off this scam. There are hundreds of them, and just zeroing down on 1 or 2 would not be justifiable. But the thing is, the fact of the matter is that any test you name can be easily be cracked. In fact, the modus operandi that they have been resorting to is also shocking, that it's a entire nexus.
It's a mega CNN News 18 investigation in what can be called a trap for Indian students studying abroad. Some fraudulent schemes are seeking to exploit students hoping to further their education abroad. CNN News 18 dives deep into the operational details of these syndicates that are operating blatantly from the national capital and from the state of Punjab. The exclusive investigation focuses on those people who claim to help you lay hands on any academic document required to fly abroad for higher studies, but turn their back on you in a situation like today's. While a majority of them remain absconding, CNN News 18 brings you a ground report uncovering their ugly truth. Take a look.
सर आप ऐसे बताओ मेरे को, आप एक चीज बता रहे थे आप उसके डिग्री का। बिल्कुल जी। ये आएगी आपकी उससे कॉलेज से जी। 5 लाख बाहर जाने वाले टेस्ट का ये 4.5 4:45 के आसपास एवरेज लेके चलो। 5.5 भी 4:45। आपका क्या है? हमारा टोटल 40 है पर पर्सन का 20 पहले 20 वीजा के बाद।
Amidst all the hue and cry around Indian students facing threat of deportation in countries like UK, Australia and Canada, CNN News 18 deep dive into the operational details of syndicates operating blatantly in national capital and the state of Punjab. Who are these people who initially promise you to help you lay your hands on any kind of educational documents required to be obtained fraudulently to fly abroad for higher studies, turn their back towards you in a crisis like this?
Posing as students desperate to leave the country for higher studies but short of documents at hand, we contact some of the agents who facilitate admissions in foreign universities. Our choice was the UK, Canada or Australia, where the students at present are facing deportation threats.
Right now TOEFL या PTE ये एग्जाम किया जा सकता है। तो इसमें टेंटेटिवली no less than 6 कोर्स के साथ अगर करेंगे दैट वुड बी अराउंड 4.5 के आसपास का एक कॉस्ट आएगी इसकी।
अच्छा, मतलब PTE या फिर TOEFL क्लियर कराना।
Hello, Namaskar. This is First Post and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. It's Tuesday and we are trying to focus on some good news. Inflation in India is at a 2-year low. Industrial production is up. The risk of recession is near zero. This is not the story elsewhere, though. So how did India buck the trend? And what does the global picture look like? We'll discuss that. Also, India is sharing a public good with the rest of the world. Saudi Arabia and Bahrain may soon join the list of countries that have adopted India's UPI. We'll talk about that and India's fintech revolution. Also look at the controversy triggered by Twitter founder Jack Dorsey. He says the government of India threatened his company during the farmer protests 2 years ago. We'll tell you about India's response and also separate facts from allegations. All of that and more coming up. The headlines first. The war in Ukraine intensifies. Russia strikes Ukraine's Kryvyi Rih. Kiev says it downed 10 out of 14 missiles launched by Moscow. Russia says it has captured several German Leopard tanks and US armored vehicles. And Kiev is now eyeing Australian F-18 fighter jets to boost its air power. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas is in Beijing amid China's growing ambitions to play facilitator in the Israel-Palestine peace talks. This is Abbas's 5th official visit to China as Beijing continues to challenge US influence in West Asia. UK police locks down Nottingham. 3 people were found dead in the central English city. A van also tried to mow down 3 others. Police suspect the 2 incidents are linked. 1 person has been arrested. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak condoles the deaths. India and Pakistan brace for cyclone Biparjoy. Over 40,000 people evacuated across both countries. India's Met Department says the storm will make landfall on Thursday near the port of Jakhau in Gujarat. And will football club PSG lose another star player after Messi? Kylian Mbappe says he will not extend his contract beyond next year. It will be a major blow to the French club. They were looking to the 24-year-old striker to fill Messi's void. If you've been to India or live here, you're familiar with the wonders of UPI, a 3-letter phenomenon that has transformed daily lives. You pull out your phone, scan a QR code and make a payment, as simple as that. And now India is sharing it with the rest of the world. UPI is all set to become India's next big export. Some countries in the neighborhood already use it. Soon, Gulf countries like Saudi Arabia and Bahrain may also have UPI. India is talking to them to enable bank-to-bank transfers and cross-border transactions via UPI. Reports say the talks are in early stages and that the Gulf countries are showing a lot of interest. This will help Indians in the region, the Indian diaspora. We're talking about more than 7 million Indians. They regularly send money home. Every year, non-resident Indians or NRIs in the Gulf send back $89 billion. That's 65% of India's total remittances. So far, they've been doing it through banks. But imagine making these transfers from their phones with minimum charges. And yes, charges would apply. You see, UPI transactions within India are free. But if you make a cross-border transaction, then there will be a fee. Anywhere between $3 to $6, according to one report. And it may be worth the cost, given what UPI has been able to do in India. UPI stands for Unified Payments Interface. But it's now become a ubiquitous payments interface. It's everywhere. Go to the remotest parts of India and you'll most likely find vendors with QR codes. Go to the busiest parts of your city and the people you see may not be carrying a photo ID, but almost all of them will have a UPI ID. It's an instant payment system. It runs mostly on a mobile phone. It is used to transfer money in real time just by scanning a code. And its success at home is driving its global expansion. UPI has some clear strengths. The first, of course, is convenience. It has disrupted payments in India. You don't have to carry cash anymore. The technology is easy to use. All payment apps support it, and all major banks have adopted it. This interoperability has fueled the high adoption. UPI's second strength is its reliability. And like always, I have some numbers. In January this year, about 8 billion transactions happened through UPI. 8 billion. Do you know how much money was transferred? Nearly $200 billion. Going by the Indian government's assessment, India does more digital transactions than the US, the UK, Germany and France combined.
The digital payment transactions amounted to $1.5 trillion annualized basis. And that is, if you compare the total of US digital transactions, UK, Germany, France, combine the 4, multiply by 4.
4 times bigger. That's massive. And this ecosystem is growing. The UPI is used by close to 300 million individuals and 50 million merchants. This proves how resilient the system is. So there is convenience, there is scale, and there is reliability. But the biggest benefit of UPI is financial inclusion. I have another statistic for you. In 2022, UPI transactions in semi-urban and rural stores skyrocketed. By how much? A record 650%, 650%. And these are towns and cities where until recently a lot of citizens did not even have a bank account. Today they are paying with their phones. The world is taking notice of this success story. Many countries want to adopt India's UPI. The trend in fact began with Bhutan. Bhutan adopted the UPI in 2021. Last year, Nepal joined the club. So did the UAE. Indian travelers to the UAE were allowed to pay through their UPI-linked accounts. Now, going by one estimate, at least 23 countries support UPI in some form or the other, and the story gets better. Recently, NRIs have been given greater access to UPI. Indians who who do not reside in India, non-resident Indians, they can use their international numbers to send money. As of now, this facility is available in 10 countries and regions: Singapore, Australia, Canada, Hong Kong, Oman, Qatar, the United States, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and the United Kingdom. These countries support this arrangement for now. The list is expected to grow. India launched the UPI as a public utility, and now it is sharing it with the rest of the world. All that fintech magic depends on one thing: India's domestic economic health. And there's good news on that front. Two important economic indicators are looking solid: inflation and industrial production. As central bankers would say, let's deal with inflation first. India's consumer price index fell to 4.25% in May, and that's a 25-month low. Inflation was around 7% in May last year. Now it's 4.25%. Now, the Reserve Bank of India has a tolerance band for inflation, sort of like a preferred range. And the upper limit here is 6%, which means at 4.25, India's current inflation is well within that range, well below that 6% upper limit. Now look at other emerging markets. In Argentina, inflation is almost 98%. In Turkey, 50%. Iran, 42%. Egypt, 21%. These countries are reeling under higher inflation. What about the developed world? The cost of living is already high in these countries, and inflation figures are a mixed bag. The numbers have cooled off in some countries like Canada, the US, France, and Italy, but others are not out of the woods, like the United Kingdom. Their retail inflation in the UK is 6.8%. In Germany, it's 6.2%. And this has a direct impact on economic output and health. But more on that later. For now, let's look at the second indicator, factory output. It is measured using something called IIP, Index of Industrial Production, IIP. It had fallen to 1.1% in March this year, but in April, it rebounded. The latest number is 4.2%. And this represents a notable increase for India. If you rewind to late last year, factory output was in the dumps. It was negative 4% in October 2022, meaning the output shrank. So the latest data shows a positive trajectory. And how is the rest of the world faring? China's industrial output was up 5.6% in April. But there's a catch. The market expectation was much higher for China, more than 10% in fact. So the pace of China's industrial recovery has been slower than expected. Could that be an opportunity for India? It could, but a lot depends on the RBI. That's India's central bank. For booming growth, you need to cut interest rates. You need to make loans cheaper. But is the RBI ready for that? Most experts say it's not. I mentioned that 6% inflation is the upper tolerance limit. Right now, it's well under that, 4.25%. But the RBI will look for a sustained dip, perhaps below 4%. It will also look for clues from the US Federal Reserve, that's America's central bank, the US Fed. It is still hiking interest rates. Once the Americans stop, other banks are expected to follow. So India, you could say, is on the starting line, ready to begin the sprint. It's all about waiting for the buzzer. But some of the other sprinters are nowhere in the picture. In fact, they may not even turn up. Take a look at this map. It shows three sets of countries, those already in recession, those at risk of recession, and those expected to escape. Germany is already in recession. They've had 2 quarters of negative GDP growth, which is technically recession. Next in line could be the United Kingdom, the UK. They have a 75% chance of recession this year. New Zealand has 70%, the US 65%, Australia 50%, and Canada 60%. What about India? As things stand, there is a 0% chance of recession in India. Saudi Arabia too is doing well, just 5% chance. China is at 12%, Brazil at 15%. So the big takeaway is this: the developed world is not out of the woods, but India appears to be safe. How did that happen? How did India buck the global trend? Well, you can't point at one specific reason for that. It's a combination of many policy choices, really. We look at 3 of them. For starters, cheap crude from Russia. That has really worked. By not taking sides in the war, New Delhi got good deals. And that's one reason why inflation is under control. The second reason is related to the pandemic. Do you remember what most governments did during the pandemic? They announced stimulus packages, and most of them were cash transfers. The US, for instance, spent about $250 billion on it. American citizens got checks up to $1,200. I'm sure it helped them, but there's a downside to such policies. More cash supply leads to more inflation. It's economics 101. But India tried another route. Things like free food distribution, loan concessions, more investment in pandemic-hit sectors. Perhaps that cashless approach worked for India. Because the biggest problem for developed economies is inflation. They've controlled it with interest hikes. But what happens if they pause? For all we know, it could shoot right back up. And that's where India is better placed. The RBI paused interest hikes back in April, yet inflation is sliding every month. What happens next is mostly out of India's hand. One is, of course, the global economy. The other is monsoons and El Nino. That's the third thing that has worked in India's favor so far, some good old luck. Remember this guy? You can blame him for most of the problems on social media. That's Jack Dorsey. He founded Twitter, sold it, and is now recounting the good old days. This time he spoke about India. He was talking about the relationship between Twitter and governments and how some governments tried to muzzle critics. Jack Dorsey says India was one of them. In fact, let me quote from what he said. It manifested in ways such as, we will shut Twitter down in India, which is a very large market for us. We will raid the homes of your employees, which they did. We will shut down your offices if you don't follow suit. And this is India, a democratic country. This is what Jack Dorsey said. Let me give you some context. Dorsey is specifically talking about the farmers' protest in India. It happened some 2 years back. He says the Indian government threatened Twitter then. Block our critics or we will shut you down. That's apparently what the government said. And how has the government responded to these claims? With a defiant rejection. Listen in to Union Minister Rajeev Chandrasekhar.
Jack Dorsey was the CEO of Twitter during a very, very dubious period in Twitter's history. What he has said is an outright lie, and I have said that publicly, and I'm reiterating it again. Twitter is a company that believed that it was not necessary for it to comply with Indian law. It believed that it did not have to comply with Indian law and made up its rules as it went along.
The minister also said Twitter was being used to spread misinformation, plus it was refusing to comply with Indian laws. You may remember that showdown. Twitter fought against India's IT rules for 2 years. They wanted to operate in India, but they did not want to follow the Indian law. It was only in 2022 that they accepted the rules. The government also says no one went to jail, nor was Twitter shut down. So what's the truth here? Let's look at the facts. Did the government of India ask Twitter to take down accounts? Yes, they did. What kind of accounts and how many? Around 1,200 accounts linked to Khalistan mostly. And Twitter did comply at first, but later on, they made a U-turn. They restored some accounts claiming freedom of expression. Now, do you see the problem here? Twitter decided what was permissible and what was not. Not the court, not the government of the country. Twitter decided to take that call. Now, I know Twitter is supposed to be a company, but that's not how Jack Dorsey imagined it. Let me quote from his words. I don't believe anyone should own or run Twitter. It wants to be a public good at a protocol level, not a company. So Dorsey wanted Twitter to be a public good. Well, that means following the rules. That also means holding yourself to government standards. Twitter did not do that in 2021. And now 2 years later, Dorsey alleges intimidation. He says his team was threatened. Frankly, it's a he said, she said situation. The government claims Dorsey's track record discredits him, which to an extent is true. I'll give you another example. Do you remember the 2021 Capitol riots in the US? Twitter was quick to crack down during the riots. No government request was needed. Twitter acted on its own. They deplatformed then President Donald Trump. But fun fact, the Taliban continued to be welcome on Twitter. Tells you about their double standards. My point is not about Trump really or the Taliban. It's about Twitter's myopia. When things happen in the US, they're quick to act or react. But when similar things happen elsewhere, they drag their feet. All US tech giants face this problem. Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, even latest tech products like ChatGPT. Recently, OpenAI CEO Sam Altman was in India. OpenAI is the company behind ChatGPT. You know what Altman said? It's hopeless for India to create something like ChatGPT. Those were the words he used. Hopeless, he said. And it was the same with Twitter and TikTok. Someone else developed these platforms and we adopted them. Perhaps it's time to change that trend. We keep talking about our IT sector, how India can be a tech superpower and a talent hub, how the sector is expected to be worth $100 billion by 2025. It already employs around 5 million people, and yet India rarely leads the tech race. We are among the biggest markets for American tech companies, but why aren't we building our own? Is it lack of ambition? Or lack of government support, or something else? Well, whatever be the reason, it calls for introspection, because companies like Twitter will never serve India's interests. Their CEOs will dress up to be grilled by US senators, but they won't answer questions in India. They won't want to comply with laws in India. They would much rather fling allegations 2 years later. Let's shift our attention to Europe. The skies above the continent look like a war zone. For the next 2 weeks, 250 military aircraft and 10,000 soldiers will dominate these skies. They're practicing how to respond to a Russian attack. So what really is happening in Europe? NATO drills, the largest ever, the biggest air exercise in NATO's history. Germany is playing host. A total of 25 countries are taking part. This includes friends of NATO as well, countries like Japan. Japan has joined as an observer. And Sweden, which is still waiting to join the NATO. And what are these troops preparing for? A potential war with Russia. Or should I say, another war with Russia, considering they're already fighting one.
This exercise is quite deliberately taking place at a level that is not intended to contribute to escalation. It is, of course, a massive presence. It is also important to send a clear signal to Russia.
So NATO is sending a message to Russia. Although the exercise is not a new idea, really. It was first thought of in the year 2018, 4 years after Russia annexed Crimea. These drills were meant to be a response. Took them 4 years to think of a response. And in the end, they chose to junk the plan. Then Russia invaded Ukraine, and more than a year into the war, NATO has finally come together to conduct an air drill. Full marks for promptness.
From my perspective, we are sending a strong message here that we care about our security. And that, I think, is something that is needed more than ever since Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
Germany is leading these drills. But what's the point of this exercise beyond making a point to Moscow? Testing and maintaining interoperability. In simple English, they're trying to see if they can fight as one force against Russia. The focus of the drills is Eastern Europe. In the next few days, the warplanes will practice maneuvers. They will fly towards the east every day, towards countries like Romania and Estonia. They're close to Russia and the war in Ukraine. And NATO is trying to show Moscow, and perhaps itself, how quickly it can deploy if the battle in Ukraine spills over. The implications are clear. They're preparing for a larger conflict. Eastern Europe has been militarized. The last pretenses of neutrality have been shed. You see, for decades, Brussels has avoided a conflict. And now they're actively gearing up for one. Europe is spending big money on arms. Again, I have some numbers. Europe's arms imports have increased by 47% in the recent past. Military spending is breaking records. Last year, Europe spent 13% more on its armies. By December 2022, Europe's defense spending crossed $200 billion for the first time ever. A part of this is going towards buying arms for Ukraine. But leading European nations, which profess neutrality for the longest time, are also arming themselves. And guess who they're turning to for the weapons? The United States of America. It has got meaty orders from its European friends. Germany is one of the biggest buyers. It has ordered 35 F-35 aircraft. The deal is worth over $8 billion. Then we have Poland. Ahead of Russia's invasion, Poland ordered 250 M1 Abrams tanks. How much did it cost them? Around $6 billion. The United Kingdom asked for a missile defense radar. The price tag was 700 million. Around the same time, Spain placed an order too. They wanted choppers from America. So the trend is quite clear. Europe feels threatened. It is arming itself and playing war games. A larger attack from Russia may become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Over in Canada, trouble is mounting for Mr. Teflon. I'm talking about Justin Trudeau. He has a way of slipping out of trouble, but this time his people want answers. They're disappointed with his handling of Canada, specifically how China meddled in Canadian elections. Some background first. Canada had intelligence that China tried to interfere in their elections, not once but twice, in 2019 and then again in 2021. But this information was never made public. The government knew about it, but they refused to act. In 2022, the intelligence got out. Several Canadian media houses published it. They accused China of trying to favor the Liberal Party. That's Justin Trudeau's group. You can see what it looks like. China tried to meddle in favor of Trudeau's party. He knew about it, but he did not act. Imagine you're the opposition in Canada. Would you let it slide? So Trudeau was forced to set up a one-man committee. Last week, its report was submitted. Do you know what it said? No public inquiry necessary. The report claimed that Trudeau's government did not knowingly ignore intelligence, whatever that means. But Canadians are far from happy. Here's what an opinion poll found. 55% of Canadians say Trudeau's response was poor or very poor. 24% say it was average, and just 14% say it was good. Frankly, these numbers are not surprising. Elections are the beating heart of every democracy. No citizen can accept election interference, especially not from a rival state like Canada. And here, Justin Trudeau knew about it. He ignored intelligence on Chinese interference, knowingly or unknowingly. Doesn't really matter. It's not a luxury that politicians really have. But our story doesn't end here. This opinion poll was taken before Friday last week. And since then, a lot has happened. Trudeau's one-man committee resigned on Friday. The opposition said he was too close to the Prime Minister, so things are not looking good for Justin Trudeau. The question is, what happens next? The opinion polls may only focus on the election meddling claim, but the results show a bigger story, the growing mistrust of China. Around 55% of Canadians want to decrease trade with China. Only 18% have a positive opinion of Beijing. What does that tell you? The average Canadian does not like China. But do they like India? Around 41% Canadians have positive opinions of India. To give you some context, the US only scored 54% on the same poll. So 41 is not a bad number at all. But tell that to the government. Trudeau's government is intent on sabotaging relations, it seems. Again, knowingly or unknowingly. Look at all the incidents this month. First, Canada's National Security Advisor accused India of interference. She clubbed India with countries like Russia and Iran. Then you had this hateful tableau. It glorified the assassination of Indira Gandhi. But Canada says it's not a hate crime. So let me sum up Trudeau's politics for you. He gives China a free pass, all the evidence and public opinion be damned. But he also shelters Indian separatists. Such mindless politics will impact bilateral ties. In fact, Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar warned of it. He said such actions are not good for relations. But don't expect Justin Trudeau to act. He's consumed by vote bank politics. In his mind, seeking action against separatists is interference, but trying to rig elections is not. It's a logic only Mr. Teflon can explain. Perhaps his free pass to China will backfire electorally. Then you can be sure of a public inquiry. Our next story is from Thailand. It's a Buddhist kingdom, but its southern region has a Muslim-majority Malay population. This region has been home to a long-standing separatist movement and violent insurgencies. In recent years, peace talks have been on. But now there is fresh talk of self-determination, even an independence referendum. The outgoing government and the military have launched a crackdown. Their critics say they're exaggerating the risks, though. Our next report takes a closer look at this conflict.
Thailand's ruling military establishment is tense. Outgoing Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha has alerted the country's National Security Council. He wants them to take action against a group of activists and politicians. Why? For holding a seminar called Self-Determination. What was it about? Separatism, apparently. At least that's what Bangkok fears, the revival of a long-running separatist movement. This is related to a province called Pat Thani. It's located in the southern part of the country. This is a map of Thailand and Malaysia. This is the border between the two countries. You see these three border provinces? They're collectively called the Pat Thani region. And they are the site of a separatist movement. A violent movement which has reportedly claimed over 7,000 lives since 2004. Why? Because despite being Thai provinces, they are home to mostly ethnic Malay people. 88% of the people here follow Islam. This is according to the Thai census of 2014. So, this region is dominated by Malaysian Muslims, but it's now part of the Buddhist kingdom of Thailand. How did that happen? The short answer is the British. Malaysia was part of the British colonial empire. It was called British Malaya. The region bordered the Kingdom of Siam, the predecessor to modern-day Thailand. The British signed a treaty with the kingdom in the year 1909. It's called the Anglo-Siamese or Bangkok Treaty of 1909. In this, the British recognized Siam's control over today's Pat Thani region. Why? Because it's the British. Trade was more important than ensuring a stable border. Money was given priority over culture and traditions, so they drew borders as they deemed fit. The result is this: decades of religious tensions in the Pat Thani region. Bangkok says the provinces are an integral part of Thailand, and they're right. Legally, the borders negotiated with Britain are valid, and any calls for redrawing those borders, any talk of independence, is unlawful. Which brings us back to the activists. They know the laws, so they didn't directly ask for independence. Instead, they asked if a referendum should be held, and if the people of Pat Thani have the right to self-determination. This has raised red flags. The administration is up in arms. They've instituted a crackdown and an investigation. A top military commander called the summit a threat to Thailand's territorial integrity and national security. Ruling party officials want the politicians who attended the summit to be probed. These politicians have now distanced themselves from the event. Any leader who's asked says the same thing. They want to put the insurgency in the region to rest. They want peace through dialogue with separatists. That independence can never be the answer. This is a common story across the world. Britain or any other colonial power causing problems that last generations. Wherever the West had their colonies, instability persists in their wake.
And speaking of problems that last for generations, let's talk about climate change. Parts of India and Pakistan are bracing for a major cyclone. The UK recently reported a heat wave. Supercharged typhoons, wildfires and droughts have become commonplace. We see the news, we know the risks, and we often wonder, what can we as individuals do about it? Well, 16 American children are showing the way. They're in the US state of Montana and they're making history. They've filed a case against their government over the climate crisis. They've sued the state of Montana, and it's the first such case ever to go to trial in the US. Its outcome could have implications beyond America, though. It could empower more people across the world to hold their government accountable for climate change. Here's a report.
They say children are the future. But what future are we leaving behind for children? One riddled with extreme weather events, where constant greenhouse gas emissions lead to irreversible climate change? Well, some children have refused this future and are fighting to protect the environment. We're talking about a group of 16 children from the US state of Montana. They have sued the state government for its fossil fuel-friendly policies, and they're actually being heard in court. In 2020, this group of children filed the lawsuit. They were between 2 and 18 years old at the time. They cited Montana's state constitution. The constitution guarantees the right to a clean and healthful environment. Yes, that's written into Montana's constitution. And the children say that the state government is blatantly ignoring that clause. Montana has the largest coal reserves in the US, and it has promoted the coal mining industry over the years. An example is a law passed in May. It limits the effectiveness of environmental regulators. It stops them from assessing the climate impacts of proposed fossil fuel projects, like coal mines or power plants. Obviously, this makes it easier for companies to flout environmental rules. The 16 children from Montana are fighting to highlight this, because the lawsuit itself does not really have a solution. Even if the children win the case, the court will only be able to issue a declaratory judgment, meaning it can say that the state's constitution was violated, but the court cannot formulate new laws. That remains in the hands of politicians. So this lawsuit will not be able to stop Montana's poor climate practices. And yet, the government is fighting back hard, using every tactic possible. First, there was slander. The state called the lawsuit a mere publicity stunt, a waste of taxpayer money, aimed at shutting down responsible energy development. Then Montana tried to get the case dismissed, first completely, then partially. But it didn't work. Then they took it to Montana's Supreme Court last week. This was a bid to delay the trial, but none of it helped. The trial has begun. It'll last 2 weeks. The judge will then produce the verdict. Experts say that Montana is unlikely to accept criticism, that it will make an appeal to a higher court, even if it's only a declaratory judgment. After all, fossil fuel companies won't want a negative outcome in such a high-profile case. It may pave the way for more such lawsuits across the US and the world, which is what the children ultimately want. Even if the Montana court can't undo the damage caused by their government, it can serve as a precedent, a rallying cry for environmentalists everywhere, one they can use in the next fight against the fossil fuel industry.
For our next story, we're taking you to the Netherlands. It's a small country in Europe, home to around 17 million people, and they're all under threat. Not by an imposing neighbor or a brutal terrorist organization, but by the sun's rays. And the government has come out with a plan to protect them. Free sunscreen. It may sound frivolous, but it's a serious situation. The cases of skin cancer are on the rise in this country, and sunscreen is their first line of defense. So this is what the government plans to do. Install sun cream dispensers across the country, in schools, in universities, in parks, at festivals and other public spaces. These will be a lot like sanitizer dispensers that you saw almost everywhere during the pandemic and since then. For the Netherlands, this is a major health initiative. The country faces record levels of skin cancer. We are talking about 1 in 6 Dutch people developing skin cancer, 1 in 6 people. The reason is UV rays, or ultraviolet rays. Overexposure to such rays, mostly from the sun, leads to skin cancer. But the sun is not the only source. There are artificial sources too, like sun lamps or tanning beds. Their rays damage skin cells. They trigger the formation of abnormal cells. And these are cancerous cells. They divide rapidly. They spread rapidly, and in some cases, they can be deadly. Skin cancer can be deadly in some cases. So the Dutch government's move is a step in the right direction. Hopefully, it will also change mindsets. You see, across the world, sunscreen is treated like a cosmetic product. It carries a heavy tax. It's often also seen as a luxury product. But increasingly, it is proving to be essential. The Dutch move may set a precedent for others to follow, because skin cancer is on the rise across Europe. More than 7 million Europeans are estimated to have it. Look at the case of Germany. Germany is a neighbor of the Netherlands. It has seen a 55% increase in deaths from skin cancer, 55% increase in the past 2 decades. Also, skin cancer, you would know, is of several types. The most serious type is called melanoma. And melanoma has claimed about 60,000 European lives in 2020. But of course, skin cancer is not limited to Europe, and it's a myth that only white people are at risk. People of all ethnicities and colors can be affected. The highest rates of melanoma, in fact, are observed in Australia and New Zealand. This is followed by Western Europe, Northern America, Northern Europe, and then Africa and Asia. So far, so depressing. But here's something encouraging too. Most cases of skin cancer are preventable. All you need is sun protection. And most experts agree that all of us need it all year round. But we need it especially during late spring and early summer. That's when harmful UV rays are the strongest. So perhaps it's time you spoke to your doctor and picked what's best for you. Have you ever been squished into a tight plane seat? Do you curse inadequate leg room on flights or fellow passengers who willfully recline their thrones? Well, if yes, then this story is for you, because we get it. Uncomfortable airplane seats can make even a short journey to paradise feel like forever. But here's some good news. The future of air travel may look very different. I'm talking about economy class bunk beds and double-decker seats. Also increased accessibility for passengers with wheelchairs. Our next report tells you what your seat could look like.